People of YouTube on the interweb, you are being lied to by your elites.
They're not telling you everything that's going on. You are not paying attention. You're asleep.
You are asleep and we are going to wake you up.
Sheeple, not sheeple.
Stop being sheeple. We are Unheard, Sirens Incorporated Society and we're Renegades.
Join us. Renegades out the portal.
Hello, friend, and welcome to Renegades of the Podcast, a monthly podcast for all the aliens, hosted by us, Unheard Sirens Incorporated. I am Remy Trail, aka Remy Renegade.
I'm Juliet.
Yes, and we are a husband and wife duo. We make pop music from an alternate universe, sort of our spin on synth pop and synthwave and retrowave. But we're also lifelong nerds, and we talk on this podcast about all the things that inspire us: music, sci-fi, culture, art, fantasy. We like to have fun. We pick topics that we enjoy going deep on. So
art is life and life is art.
Indeed.
So our lives are very influenced by art, including pop culture and media, and then it goes back into the art we create. So it's a relationship of sort of exploring how we find ourselves at this moment in the galaxy, floating on this little speck of rock,
indeed,
making synthwave music.
Indeed, if you've never heard our music, first of all, if you've found our podcast and never heard our music before,
Yay, cool.
Please check us out. Hi, welcome. And also please
check
feel
out our
free to check out
videos.
our music. That's right.
Yeah. We're everywhere music is, Unheard Sirens Incorporated.
That's right. And whether you're watching us right now on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify, we are in both places, so go check us out. And first of all, a couple of apologies up top. Apologies if you hear our dogs barking in the background.
There's some baying in the neighborhood, and it's really hard for our dogs to resist sending on the messages of distress.
We have two high-strung brother and sister corgis, and they go nuts at basically everything. So apologies for that. And also apologies that this podcast is a little bit later than normal. Usually we try to get this out the first Thursday of every month. We kind of missed August because there was multiple things going on. First of all, you went to India.
I was in India for a month, so I was a little bit not accessible.
Preoccupied, yeah. So our schedules didn't line up. We're also still busy working on the material for the next album and stuff like that. So this will be our September podcast, but I may try to get this out like that final week in August. I want to get this out as soon as possible because of one of the topics we're talking about today. So this will kind of be our September one. So again, apologies for the lateness, but we're doing what we can. But once again, thank you for joining us. And this is going to be a little bit looser than we usually do. Usually for this first segment of our podcast, we pick a topic and we go heavy on that topic. We have a couple of pop culture things we're going to talk about a little later. But the first topic we have to talk about is something that you're probably already aware of, unless you're living under a rock. And that's the ongoing WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes that are going on with the big producers and stuff like that. And first of all, if you don't know what's going on, I'm going to try and briefly summarize it, and I'll probably miss several details. But I invite you to check out some of the videos in the description box that are links that really go deep into all the issues that are going on. But basically, there are thousands upon thousands of people working in the entertainment industry right now who are not making what they should, and it's really sad, especially with like streaming residuals are not what they should be. And also, AI technology is coming in and it's threatening to, replace some lower background actors and, writers and stuff like that, replace their jobs, essentially. This isn't just, the big actors and writers you hear about all the time who are making millions and millions of dollars. There are several more who you probably watch on, Netflix or Hulu or whatever you watch, some great, who you would think could pay their rent and have health care and stuff, but can't.
They're having to have second jobs the whole time they're in hit TV shows, and don't earn enough to qualify for their health insurance and the actors union and stuff. So it's really quite. It's really Yeah. The CEOs have gone from making an average of 30 times as much as your average actor to 400-ish times
as much, which is
as your average actor, which is like more than 10 times increase.
Unbelievably unfair. Yeah.
While the pay of the actors, as opposed to the cost of living and just regular inflation, there's been nothing done about that. So basically, I think the industry has done everything it can to get away with everything it can for as long as it can, and then we're at the breaking point, and they're having to really hold the line and push back against an industry that's become more and more abusive of the people that do all the work and create all of the work. The people that know how to market the work and schmooze are just taking more and more and more and more and more of all of the
CEOs
profits ever generated.
Aren't the ones creating anything. They're just basically the gamblers at the casino saying, oh, we're going to put money behind this project, big money, big money. And
they're the snake charmers. They talk well, and they can talk to the investors, and they can talk to other bureaucrats and producers and the stockholders, shareholders. And those are important things too, because you got to keep the wheels all greased. But there is a lot of money in the system, and it needs to be distributed in a more equitable and fair way. And it needs to trickle down, and it needs to go to the people that are creating the work that keeps this all going.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're definitely at a breaking point for sure, because one, it's like there's been several high profile flops, that have come out recently, like movies that everybody expected was going to make, had like $200-300 million in its budget, and like didn't make any of that money back. First of all, those budgets are ridiculous, and secondly, it's like that
things have been shifting since the pandemic anyway. So they are kind of gambling on, do we still have blockbusters? Is that the world we're living in? Like, is that the kind of project to fund? But also, they're playing it so safe when it comes to the projects that are getting those mega budgets. And so you have tiny budgets of the independents, and then these massive excessive budgets for the blockbusters. And it doesn't necessarily portray what people want to see or what people are turning up to pay for now. That it is safe, to be out and about in public. In most places in the world right now, the pandemic has abated in a way that we can go back to the theaters. But, how do we want to? At first, everything was like at home and in the theater. Yeah. Now they're trying to force that behavior to change by not releasing it at home and having more movies that are, just for the theater. So they're trying to like influence our behavior again, but people can, are voting with their behavior, with their wallets, and, some of this is going to be shifting. So,
I mean, that's a whole nother issue of like, budgets and what they're making and stuff like that. But like, as far as like the pay structure for, people making your stuff, it's like, I think, first of all, I feel like if you're one of those people watching like, oh, these are just a bunch of entitled rich actors, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm not making that amount of money, and you're working like a minimum wage job. You're thinking that. I think more industries need to be doing what the actors and writers are doing and need to be striking. It's like, this is not a problem that is unique to Hollywood actors and writers. This is across the board of like people who are getting taken advantage of.
This is capitalism, folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, some big changes.
But they're lucky enough that they have a union, which almost no one in America has. There are very, very few labor unions in operation. It's very regional.
People at the top
of places in the country that actually have any, and they get weakened all the time. Yeah. So it's also, they're sort of fighting for more than just themselves, because they're fighting for the ability to organize as workers and push back against a system that's more and more and more to take, unevenly distributed. The profits are going, 98% to the people on top. Yeah. So the 2% get 98% of the profits, and 98% get 2% of the profits. And that's kind of how capitalism is going, folks. I don't know if you've, we're going to talk a lot about this in this podcast, but I don't know if you've been paying attention. Yeah. But the little guys are getting screwed, y'all. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot of the top 1-2%.
The top people, 1% of the top 1%.
They also have no interest in a middle class. They only want worker drones that make nothing, and then they want to have a lot of money and a lot of power. And they're not interested in all of this middle stuff. And we're fighting for middle ground, because the actors are, something like $26,000 for the average salary. And that's not a living wage in LA and New York, where most of them are located.
It's ridiculous.
they don't qualify for their own health insurance as actors that are part of a guild if their earnings are below 26,000. So you're talking about people that are full-time actors that we think are living luxurious lives, and they certainly have to do a lot of auditions and a lot of training. They have to change their bodies and think about their style and do all of this like marketing of their physical selves, which I have to say is a little bit worrying, you know. And they love acting and they want to do it, and then they're not making as much as they could make at the local coffee shop, even if they dropped out of high school. So how is this the industry that, and everybody's glued to the tube. So, you know, we're all watching things, we're streaming things, we're on our phones, we're on our televisions, we're still going to the movies. I mean, this is part of our world now, and it shouldn't be so out of balance.
No, I don't care what work. I don't care if you're flipping burgers or if you're writing scripts for Hollywood. If you're working 40 hours a week, you should be able to make enough money to have a roof over your head
and health insurance
and
good health insurance and a good roof over your head
and pay your rent. It's like
the phenomenon of the working poor in our nation.
These should not be radical opinions.
Increasing that people are working full time, working more than one job, and they still can't pay their bills. And at the same time, you know, the political system pecks away at what backup people have in terms of other social supports for people that are working poor. What are they supposed to do? You know, what are any of us supposed to do? So I'm really glad they're striking. I know it's got to be really hard on them. The writer's strike started first, so they've been in this several months longer, and now the actors have joined them, which is good. It strengthens the position of the writers to have another guild striking. I think that's the
first time that's happened in like 60 years or something like that.
So it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and I'm glad it's happening. I hope it helps to bring more weight to this, and I think it is going to affect how many new things come out. You know, they'll be scrambling to have 6 months, a year, 18 months from now, depending on how long the strike goes on, 2 years from now, we're going to see a lot of downstream effects from the strike, and we should. You know, the industry has gotten completely out of balance, and they have every right to fight for what they're worth, and I wish them luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you can go back and watch really good things that already exist that maybe you haven't watched yet, which we're going to keep talking about in this segment. It's like 2 more shows maybe you haven't watched yet, but I'll save it.
But first I will say, so what was I going to say? So first of all, if you're hearing what we're saying, if you want to help out, I would encourage you to donate to the Entertainment Community Fund. That is entertainmentcommunity.org. I'll link that in the description box down below if you're watching this on YouTube. Definitely give what you can to help those people who are struggling right now, who are on the picket line, who are on the front line, fighting for their rights. And
there are executives from these companies that went on the record to be quoted saying, "We just want to wait them out until they start losing their homes." And we know that it's a cold and evil plan, but we're going to do it anyway. And that's capitalism,
not
folks.
The good guys.
P.S. Are you paying attention? This is just capitalism. Those nasty, evil things that the executives are saying, that's what they're saying in every industry. That's what executives think. They'll just wait us all out until we die or starve or lose our homes, and that'll make us more compliant, and they'll just get more profits and more money and stick it in their ears and feel really superior and go, But nonetheless, that's how we can help. We can help by, if we have enough contributing to the fund that's helping the actors to stay well and feed their families and not lose their homes while they're trying to, push this to a point of fair negotiations.
But anyway, so as of this recording, I think I heard somewhere that in the next few days, or maybe it already happened, so the writers were supposed to go back to the table with the producers union recently. So we'll see what happens. Again, as of this recording, things could have changed. We run that risk with this topic, but here's the thing.
Any podcast is like that. But trying to talk about current events.
At the same time, it's like, I hope this podcast is outdated sooner rather than later. I hope you're watching this and this is far in the past. I hope that the writers and the actors get everything they're asking for. I hope that they. I think the residuals piece might get a little dicey as far as how much they get, because we got greedy capitalists. So my worry with that is if they're required to pay so much in residuals, they're going to start streaming services are going to start slashing more of their lesser performing content that isn't some big moneymaker like Stranger Things or something. That's a little worrisome, but I think
it's better that
they should
do
be
that
getting paid more though.
Than keep
Like,
shorting
they should.
the people that
It's
create the
ridiculous.
work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'd rather just go back into the catalog and start rewatching and finding
There you
new
go.
things that we
Yeah.
all missed the first
Right.
time, and have less content come out and have people be working towards a more fair structure for compensation than just have new stuff for the sake of new
Sure.
stuff. Because that's another thing that's flawed about capitalism is everything is based on each new quarter's rankings, and everything is about executives pleasing shareholders that are investing in the stock market and
Yeah.
believing in these companies, and the belief in the success of the company that causes resources
Yeah.
to flow into it is quarter by quarterly earnings. So it's always more, always new, always something else. And we have a lot of content in our world. And, you know, if there was a huge drying up of new content, I actually think that would be good. We could all chat with each other about things we loved that have really had a positive influence on us and made us think and made us cry and made us laugh and whatever we're looking for. And we've all missed things because there's so much content. So
Right.
I'm actually, you know, even
There
if
you go.
they're, you know, it is sad for me sometimes when you can tell in a show that they had a multi-series arc and then they get cut off early. That's really frustrating and really sad because you can see that the creators knew where it was going to go and they just get silenced in the midst of their storytelling.
Yeah.
And it's like painful. So that's frustrating and hard. And, you know, there's multiple shows that were so sad that just got cut off and we're not going to get the rest of the story. But at the same time, I'd still rather people be paid fairly.
No, absolutely.
I'll deal with my disappointment, y'all. Go get paid well.
Exactly. No, 100%. I 100% agree with that. And before we move on to our other, you know, main topic for tonight, I want to mention this could, again, we're going to see what's going to happen with these strikes in the coming weeks and months. If it does keep going on, a lot of YouTube creators who actually do so similar stuff to what we do. Again, we're musicians who, you know, kind of review content from the perspective of musicians and how we're influenced by it. But there are other, you know, content creators who do a lot of movie reviews and stuff like that, stuff that I watch a lot, who are taking the stance of of solidarity with the writers and the actors by not doing the regular content that they do and not like plugging these big studios who are being struck against, because it's kind of acts as promotion for them in a way and helps them and helps the strikes go on longer. So that could affect us going forward. I'm not going to change anything yet, but in the coming months, if this is still going on, I may retool some of the topics we cover and we may become more music centric. We'll see. We'll see, because like I'm in that position of, obviously we're not like the biggest channel in the world yet. We have like 200 subscribers, but still I want to like show as much solidarity as possible. We're not going to change anything just yet, but I will preface it when we start talking about entertainment topics that are entertainment properties that are owned by these big studios. We are not doing this as promotion. We are doing this as, to talk about how these projects inspire us. And we're
but
doing
we
it
study,
from that
we
aspect.
study a lot of niche things that are more subculture oriented anyway. And
Sure.
we've done a lot of things that are looking back in the past like 40 years
Sure.
of entertainment history, and shows, movies, and music that have all had an influence on culture and on us and on our art and the art of other people that we're following. So I don't think we've been overly plugging the fat cats in their like recent production.
But
anyway.
I think even when we do, we can at least preface it by saying, hey, please support the strikes, and we'll tag it with that very important asterisk.
We're on the side of the artists.
Yes. 100%, because we are artists ourselves, and we also would love to get paid more for our art. So
we would welcome those opportunities also.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. I wanted to pick a topic for this podcast because we were late, because we had a lot going on. I wanted to pick something that was kind of easy for us to tackle, that we didn't have to do at least a whole lot of review and research and stuff like that. Other than our Pop Portal segment, which is our second segment, which we'll get into that later. But so our main topic for tonight, I wanted to pick. I decided that we should talk about bingeable TV shows, or shows that the two of us have binged multiple times, because I feel like it's something we could tackle very easily. It's shows we know a lot of, and it's a nice connection point. And also, this first show definitely fits the theme of fighting capitalism and fighting against the man. It is none other than a show that started in 2015 talking about Mr. Robot. That's right. Mr. Robot, show that aired on USA Network starting in 2015.
We have our masks.
Yes, we have our F Society masks right here. If you've never seen Mr. Robot, it is a show about a vigilante hacker played by Remy Malek. That's right, star who blew up basically thanks to this show. They became a household name and got it into Bohemian Rhapsody and was in a Bond movie and all this stuff, and has a very flourishing acting career off the back of his brilliant performance as Elliot Alderson, the main character in this show, who's very kind of socially awkward, very kind of lonely, maybe on the spectrum a bit, and like has trouble relating to people, but he's a brilliant hacker. He knows computers inside and out, and he uses his hacking skills as like to be a vigilante, and he goes after people who use the internet for like pedophiles and nefarious things, and takes them down, one by one, but also is fighting against this company called E Corp, which is Evil Corp, which he rewrites in his brain to be Evil Corp. And so he basically represents every large conglomerate that is taking control of the world right now. It's like they're all rolled into one. It's just E Corp.
Yeah, which they are all rolled into about 2 or 3, and even the 2 or 3 they're all rolled into.
They're all embedded together
actually all
anyway,
the same people on those boards. So, P.S. guys, it is like this that we do have. We do have Evil Corp. I mean, that's we're living in Mr. Robot's world. Like, he's not really talking about things that are fiction. Yeah. He's talking about the world we live in and ways that can maybe help people put more pieces together, which is part of what we like about it.
So the show kind of follows Elliot as he tries to
takes on Evil Corp.
He takes on Evil Corp. He gets this kind of ragtag like hacker group together, and it follows this hack that they do on Evil Corp and the fallout from all of that. And this show, I discovered it last year around this time. The last time you took a big trip, basically every time
whenever I travel, we find something new to binge watch.
Exactly. That's because like
more things to do.
Because you were leaving town for several weeks, and I don't want to continue watching something we already watched together. Yeah, we watch like Doctor Who and stuff like that, and as husband and wife, we watch a lot of stuff together. But I don't want to keep watching something we're already watching. Me. I want to pick something else, and I've heard about Mr. Robot like off and on, and I'm like, I think I'll finally give the show a shot, and then like I'll binge watched almost the entire thing before she got back from vacation. I was like,
then we started rewatching it together. Yeah. And then I went away for a month, so he re-binged it. And then I came back, so now we're re-binging it together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he's gotten the quadruple pass.
Yeah. So I'm on my 3rd or 4th time watching the episodes. I think the show is like brilliantly written. Like kudos to Sam Esmail, who created the show and is like the main writing force behind it. Much like Elliot rewrites E Corp to be Evil Corp in his head, I always rewrite Sam Esmail to Sam Email because it's just
his name is Sam's Email. If you
Sam's
switch
email,
2 letters.
Because it's a hacker show. It's about computers. Sam, his last name is so similar to email. It's just anyway.
It's crazy. It's fun. And also Christian Slater's one of the main actors. He's an executive producer on the show as well. And for any of you who follow Christian Slater's career at all, and like remember Heathers or remember Pump Up the Volume from the 90s, like he's always been a social critic type actor.
He's brilliantly cast as the titular Mr. Robot, who is the sort of confident like leader of the hacker group that recruits
called F Society.
Called F Society, that recruits Elliot into their ranks to help them really pull off this thing. So
Mr. Robot is running F Society, and he gets Elliot because Elliot is placed in a perfect place to be a Trojan horse and get a hack going from the inside.
Yeah, the cyber security company called AllSafe, which does their security. Their big client they're not all safe.
But they're doing cybersecurity for Evil Corp. So because Elliot's already working for AllSafe, he can get something that's going to get back into Evil Corp's network.
And you find out some more stuff about Mr. Robot later in season 1, which we'll get into deeper into spoilers later, but we'll give you fair warning when we do.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what I love about the show, it tackles those themes of fighting corporate greed and this kind of hyper capitalism that we live in now. It's a great kind of myth allegory, I guess, for that. But also like it's not simple. It's not on the nose messaging. Like nobody's black and white. Everybody is shades of gray. And it's brilliantly, written. Like even when stuff starts to go right, and like the hack goes through. It's like, was this a good thing? Was this a bad thing?
There's a lot of unintended consequences that the hacking group hadn't really foreseen. They're trying to do a hack that would actually erase the debt records so that everybody's slate would be wiped clean. You wouldn't have any more credit card debt. You wouldn't have anything more owed on your house. You wouldn't have any more student loan debt and all of that. But it is much more complicated than that, because there's also no cash flow in the system. So people don't have enough money to buy food. So it's a different kind of world than they expect. They think they're going to just make things better, but they just change things radically when the hack goes through. And then you have to watch the seasons to see how things play out and what they do to kind of respond to how it unfolds.
Yeah. And there's also, there's a lot going on with with Elliot's character. He deals with like crippling loneliness, and he is a morphine addict for a good part of the first, season. And he's dealing with that. At the same time, he's joining this F Society group. And it also kind of revolves around, a lot of the characters in his life, like his best friend Angela, who also works at AllSafe with him. And both of their parents, both Elliot's father and Angela's mother, died at working for this Washington Township in the 90s, which is owned by E Corp. And they had this massive leak that was causing people to develop cancer. And, Elliot's father dies of leukemia due to his work with this plant. And that's kind of informs Elliot's motivations for doing this hack and for his pure hatred of Evil Corp. Because
they killed his father and they fired his father rather than taking care of him too. So they denied any responsibility, but it comes out that, during the course of the show, there's more and more evidence of how they knew very well what was happening, and they just decided to cover it up and just, they looked at the cold, hard calculus of it and said, well, the lawsuits later from a few people dying are cheaper to settle than changing our plan and changing this plant and dealing with the pollution, which is a real decision that corporations all over our world are constantly making. They would rather do the 7-year-long class action lawsuits later after people have lost their loved ones. It all rings
true.
Yeah, because they just look at the math and they're like, oh, well, there's some settlements that have gone through even very recently that are like billions of dollars, but there's still a drop in the bucket compared to what these companies are making. So they'd much rather remain abusers and then just pay a few people off and just keep doing what they're doing, because that's the path of least resistance. And we'd already talked about covering Mr. Robot in one of our podcasts, and then pairing it with the actors and writers strike is very appropriate, because the same kinds of these Machiavellian behaviors on the part of the people in charge are leading to all of the conditions that are exposed in the show. And these are the same conditions that actually exist in our world. It's really not fiction, guys.
No,
it's not fiction.
It's really not.
It's a very, very wonderfully created story of characters going through something that's very much based in our reality.
It feels it doesn't feel terribly exaggerated in what it's portraying, like, at all. Like, I really feel like there's some alternate universe where these events are playing out. What's cool about the show is it started in 2015 and it ended in 2019. They did 4 seasons, but the entirety of the show takes place in the year 2015. It's a bit cool in that way. Like, it's very finite in its focus, and also they make several references in the show to Back to the Future 2, which is great. And also, that's one of the things that feels like this show was written for me, because it feels like it's playing on my own nostalgia, not only just for Back to the Future period, but especially Back to the Future 2, because I love Back to the Future 2. I know Back to the Future 1 is like a perfect movie, and of course, I think Back to the Future, the first one, is the best movie in the trilogy, but I think Back to the Future 2 is my favorite one, because they go to the future and then they come back to a present that is like a disaster, that is hell, and then they go back inside the first movie, and it's in a really fun way that's along the events of the first movie. So, like, I've always loved Back to the Future 2, so the fact that Mr. Robot makes so many little, references here and there to Back to the Future 2 in a show that takes place in 2015, the year in the future that they travel to in Back to the Future 2, it's just, like, really cool.
Oh no! Mask is down.
This is the mask that the F Society group takes on. F Society.
We are coming for you.
We are coming for you. Evil capitalists, we're coming for
You have to
you.
wear the hat.
Oh, it's good. Yes.
We need our props. Props
We
are
need our
fun.
props, yes. When we have them, we need them. We are coming for you. Free! You are free from debt slavery.
Wow. It'd be a really cute Halloween outfit for you, baby.
Yep. It may be a future cosplay.
With the skirt and the top. And the whole thing's working. I like it. I like what's happening from head to toe. Yeah, that was good.
Future date night ideas.
Okay.
But yeah. So, yep. It happens sometimes. It happens. I'll be your Mr. Robot. Wait, what?
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 But there's some rants that they get to do, that Elliot gets to do, and Christian Slater gets to do. They make me so happy.
Yes.
You gotta love
There's
it.
some
Like
great,
a brilliant,
speeches and clips and stuff like that.
rants. And then sometimes because you as an audience member are a character in the show, you're in his invisible friend that he's speaking to. So he turns to the character and he's like, I know what you're thinking. Don't tell me that. Yes. And then he turns back and goes back into the show. And it's hilarious the way that they deal with the fourth wall in the audience and involving you in the storytelling.
Yeah, there's definitely some
incredibly engaging.
Some mental health issues. So like Elliot is kind of your narrator, but he's a very unreliable narrator. So you're not sure like what's
and he
the facts
thinks he's getting information from the audience, from you on the other side of the camera. Yeah. He also feels that you are unreliable.
Who he just refers to as friend, which is why I refer to everybody as hello friend at the beginning of this episode. Hello, friend.
Is everybody out there? You're the friend, right? You're the one giving us the information. Don't you know what's going on? We have no idea.
So yeah, I would highly encourage you guys check out Mr. Robot if you haven't. It's on. I believe it's on Amazon right now. So you can watch it there. I guess we gotta start.
It was on USA Network originally, which is not one of the major networks.
Which is but also has
had some good shows.
The fact that this brilliant show came out is also weird that it came out on USA Network because. No knock on USA Network,
the big
but
corporations own ABC, NBC, and
they own USA too.
I know. So, but at least they were probably less people might see it. I don't know. I feel like it's just critical of society.
Yeah,
I'm just happy it got made.
The balls of this storytelling, the fact that USA just wanted to pull the trigger on it, I'm like, kudos to you guys.
Yeah.
Unlike a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Yeah. So
I don't know if we need to do the spoilers version. I think this might be good enough. There's a lot of reveals in the show. I feel like we got just take your breath away a little bit. I mean, it's very smart storytelling, and there's more than one twist and turn in the course of the various seasons of the show.
Right.
And they're playing around with Elliot is having trouble negotiating reality and sometimes lives in a little bit of a fantasy world. And so then there's times when retrospectively things that were filmed as if they were the regular reality, you're discovering along with Elliot, did that happen? Did that not happen? Was that in his head?
You're bringing it up. I got to bring it up. So brief spoiler, if you haven't watched season 1, I'm going to give you one spoiler. I'm going to do one spoiler. I'm going to give you guys a time code to skip to if you haven't watched it. Go watch season 1. Pause this video. Go watch it. Then come back here.
It's worth talking about.
It's revealed that Mr. Robot is not only a character in Elliot's head, and he's been Mr. Robot the entire time, but Mr. Robot also appears as Elliot's dead father. Yeah. So Christian Slater is Elliot's dad, who died in 12. When he was a young kid. And so the Mr. Robot he's been seeing leading the F Society group is actually this alternate personality of Elliot. It's very much kind of a lift of the twist from Fight Club, but Sam Email doesn't care. He kind of owns the influences on his sleeves. There's several other homages to other movies and stuff throughout the show, but it's played so well and it's done in such an original way. It's like a collage of all these awesome things. It's wearing its influences on its sleeve, and I love that.
Yeah.
But it was a great reveal when that happened, when it was revealed that Mr. Robot was a personality in Elliot's head the whole time.
And then you have to think about every episode you watched and every scene and how it was filmed, and you're thinking back and you're like, how the hell does this work? And then you can rewatch it to kind of watch for what's happening, and how is he? What about when he's interacting directly with Mr. Robot? What's that like? And they start to explain it and kind of show you what was happening and how it works and what you're seeing as the as the friend who's keeping an eye on things. So yeah, I think they did a good job.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it was one of those things like when that reveal happened, I was like, it was exactly that. I was like, wait a minute, what? Because Mr. Robot was talking to other people who were not Elliot, but then I've watched it again a couple other times, and watching season 1 all the way through again and seeing like, because all the times when Elliot's talking to Mr. Robot, it's all in his head, and then like when it's Mr. Robot talking, that's just that more confident personality taking over and talking through him. So like it kind of makes sense in that. And also they like in season one of the seasons, they go back to one of the other scenes where you saw Mr. Robot talking to one of the other characters, and then they do that scene again, but it's Elliot saying the same lines and doing the same thing. So like that was a cool like shift of perspective there.
Yeah, there's little things they do to kind of show you what was happening, and if they'd filmed it a different way, here's what's happening when Elliot's kind of inhabiting his Mr. Robot persona, because basically he's created another self and let his father inhabit that self, and that's the one who is just determined to take down Evil Corp and get retribution. So it makes sense that he would make that more aggressive hacker side of himself, who's very sure that the right thing to do is to hack them and take them down. Whereas Elliot himself is much more conflicted and uncertain, and he is worried about some of these envisioned and unintended consequences that can happen with a big hack. Whereas Mr. Robot's like, screw him, I'm doing it. So it's really interesting because people that have dealt with dissociative identity disorder, schizophrenia, it does it in a way that gives you a lot of understanding and compassion about what's going on. And you also see his social anxiety, which a lot of people that don't go all the way to developing full-blown invisible friends or multiple personalities, many people are dealing with social anxiety and are dealing with loneliness. And he's in a lot of pain, and he's really lonely as the show starts. And that's led to the amount of distress that's created a whole other set of personas. And it continues to play out, and the reveal of who Mr. Robot is and what's happening is not the only reveal in the show, but I do think it's the only one we should really talk about. Oh yeah, because it's so worth watching the show, and I love not knowing too much. Yeah, I love just being able to like go into something and just get truly surprised. So if you can, do yourself a favor and don't Google all the reveals, but ahead of time, like if you haven't seen the show, go watch it. It's really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great writing.
There's some, again, it's not...
And directing and casting.
It's not simple at all. There's some very complex things that happen when the hack happens. Like there's another hacker group in China called the Dark Army that's was behind a lot of it too.
They're conspiring.
And they're like conspiring to kind of help China come...
Yeah, and there's reasons why Dark Army is involved. And the reasons are not all as simple as you might think either. So everything is much more complicated. And... they're spinning the web from so early on, and it's a very, very complicated web. And the whole 4 seasons, every single episode of the show, new things are unfolding, and you're learning new things about what happened in the first episode. Because as things get more clear, you can reflect on how it started and go, so if you watch all the way to the end and go back to the beginning, which is why this is a bingeable show, not just once, but multiple times bingeable, you see new things, because they were always weaving it. And it's kind of like, the Matrix kind of fell apart a little bit, the Matrix series, and it was so brilliant in the first movie. And I thought it still had a lot to say that was really interesting and really dynamic in the second movie. And the third movie was sort of like, I feel like they didn't know what the arc was. I feel like they fell apart as like storytellers. And then there's the new Matrix movie, which was kind of interesting. You pop back into the storyline, 25 years later or whatever. And it is 25 years later for the actors and in the storyline. And that's cool. And they reflected back, and I'm glad there was another movie, and I'll probably watch it a second time, but it still was like nothing like the brilliance and the insight and what it was saying, what it was commenting on about our world and the possibilities of what's maybe really happening in our world. There are things that the Matrix was helping people to wake up and see, but they kind of lost it. Like they just didn't know enough about where they were going. And this show does not have that problem. This show knows a lot about where it's going.
That's the thing, is like Sam Esmail.
I can't even
originally envisioned.
It's really impressive.
Sam Esmail envisioned originally Mr. Robot being a movie. He tried to write it as a movie, but like
way too much.
The first act was like 90 pages or something. Like he had to make it a series, and I'm so glad it was a series. I'm so glad it played out the way it does. Like it plays out like a long story. There's no fat in this. There's no filler in this. Like everything progresses the story forward,
and it has this urgency. It always ends, and you're like, next episode, please. Like it's just got so much momentum, and it's really tight. It's 4 seasons, and it's really, really tight. Character development and storyline development and unfolding and more realizations. Yeah. You're like, whoa. I mean, it is really brilliant. It's some of the smartest storytelling, that I can think of, because it's just so cohesive to have multiple seasons. And the casting and the acting they're just phenomenal. I mean, I think all of the cast. All of the cast. Oh my God. Yeah. Like his hacker crew and his friend Angela, and then there's this guy from Evil Corp, Tyrell Wellick, who becomes mixed up and embroiled, and is he an ally, or is he working against him? Are they going to manipulate him? Is he dead if they killed him?
Exactly.
Like, what happened to Tyrell Wellick?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just like this brilliant mystery, and his wife, who's just she's just another sociopath in high heels and hipster clothing, and it's amazing. There, and then the executives from Evil Corp and what's going on with them, and with the Dark Army people, and the cast, the lead actor of the Dark Army. Whoa, everything is good.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah.
I was so glad when Remy found it and showed me the show, because I didn't really know a lot about the show. And so I went in cold. I didn't know any spoilers, and I just genuinely got to experience it. And I was just like, whoa, very impressed. Very impressed.
And also, we've been trying to get my brother-in-law, her brother, to watch the damn show, because
my brother kind of is a character from Mr. Robot.
No, he's a big conspiracy theorist. He's always talking about the stuff that government's actually doing and the secret.
But he reads their source documents. He's not just reading incendiary.
But I'm keep watching certain segments and things that Elliot monologues, Elliot's monologues and stuff like that. I'm like, bro, you need to watch this show.
It just sounds like you. So it might be an extra reason we love it a lot.
Yeah.
My brother's always trying to deconstruct reality and figure out what's really going on here.
Yeah. So such an awesome show, and I keep coming back to it, and I'm so glad it exists in our messed up world. And
it's telling an important story.
It's truly amazing, really, because and again, that it came. Again, no diss on USA, but it came from USA Network of all places. No offense, but I think of them for WWE and shows that I usually skip.
No, but they had other good shows that I liked. They had White Collar was a show that they created that I really liked. But White Collar doesn't it's really good storytelling, and I like that show a lot. But it's not as deep as this show. Burn Notice might have come from them.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
I like Burn Notice first. I watched Burn Notice, and hey, it's got Sam Raimi in it, right?
Yeah. No,
what's his name?
Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell, sorry.
The guy who's always in Sam Raimi movies.
Sorry, that's why.
That's why you thought that.
We're association.
Because Bruce Campbell always pops up in Sam Raimi.
Yes, it's got Bruce Campbell. I mean, you can't hate that, right?
Yeah, right.
But those are not incredibly deep shows.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
A sort of knockoff Bond turned into a TV series.
Right.
And White Collar's good because, you have the sort of the Saint, you have the kind of mastermind criminal with a heart of gold, and will he reform or won't he? So those are fun too. So, I wasn't totally surprised that USA would make a good show, but this one definitely has the most depth and the most social critique that's valuable, incredibly valuable, that they put forward. This is not just entertainment, and it's more challenging than just to feel good and laugh and no, this show is going to make you feel some things. It's going to make you think some things. It is going to disturb you and have some things that are I don't want to watch that. There's some moments that are, there's some really, really brutal imagery of things that happen and what they show on camera versus sometimes things that are happening just off camera that are horrible, but at least you don't have to see them, kind of thing. So it does not always spare you as the viewer. You sometimes have to go through some pretty gruesome stuff with the characters to watch the show. So it's not fluff 100%. At all, but it's not so it doesn't have so much gratuitous violence.
No, absolutely not.
And it serves the story. You understand why it's happening. They're not just
it makes it feel real.
Yeah.
It feels
it's not Kill Bill.
It's not sugarcoating you at all. And it's not overblown violence exactly like Tarantino.
Which is just more that's the whole thing. Everything's just got to be about that.
Yeah.
This is a little more like American History X. It's violence and it's but it's pretty earned. You can see how it's coming, what what leads to the
Yeah,
hyper
100%.
violence that you see.
Also, as musicians, got to bring this up before we move on to our next thing. Great music in this show, and also very like synthy, electronically. It kind of fits the synthwave vibe. And a lot of the score is on Spotify, so that's great.
Yeah, so check out the music too.
So yeah, definitely check out Mr. Robot, you guys. But now we're gonna pivot a little bit. We're gonna move to
another
TV
bingeable show.
Another bingeable show that you binge watch all the time. In fact, I catch you several nights. You're passed out on the couch downstairs in front of episodes of this show.
Yes.
This and another show. I was actually wondering if you were going to pick this one or Supernatural. You picked this one, which is The Magicians.
The Magicians. Yeah. So there's like 2 shows that I binge watch the most right now. So if I don't know what else to watch and I just want to put something on that I'm going to enjoy and it's really entertaining, I'm not always ready for a new world because it's risky. I might like it, I might not like it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of seasons. Like maybe I want to keep watching it, maybe I don't.
You got to have your comfort food shows for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like in an earlier era, this would have been about, like Buffy or the X-Files or, 6 Feet Under. Those are some of the shows that like were my binging shows that I wanted to watch and I could watch them again and again back in the day. But, now I've seen those many times and some of them are not on convenient streaming services anymore either. So it's like the newer ones. So it's like Supernatural and The Magicians, which are quite different shows. So we're going to talk about The Magicians this time. Yeah. And, it was originally on the Sci-Fi Network, on Sci-Fi, which is another thing I liked about it, that we were talking about a USA show and a Sci-Fi show that we both really enjoy, because I feel like some of the smaller networks can take more risks and do things that are very innovative, because The Magicians has a lot of cussing and a lot of drug use and a lot of sex and a lot of kind of crazy things going on, and they could just go there. It's much more grown up and adult. It's not a good show to watch with kids that you don't want seeing a lot of cussing, sex, and drug use, because it has that. So don't watch it with little ones. And don't even watch it with preteens and teens unless you're really comfortable with them seeing that kind of thing. But it's basically... I grew up with The Hobbit, and my mom read The Hobbit to me when I was 5 and loved The Hobbit. And then, Lord of the Rings movies came out. So my mom didn't like Lord of the Rings, but I did. I read that too. And, it's like that, the magical world. And I loved The Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. And so it's like that, building worlds that have different rules, that have like beautiful magic in it. And Harry Potter came in. And so that was a thing, and it fed that itch. But I think mine is much more from The Hobbit, as like the beginning of me loving like fantasy and the magical worlds that are possible to think about, or perhaps, they're real. Perhaps they're in an alternate dimension, that there are rules where magic exists. We certainly like to think about it a lot, and we write about it a lot. As human beings, there's just so many different worlds that are built that have these kinds of operating principles. And I like these worlds. And so it's nice to see something new that adds to it. And there was a lot of emphasis on, because of the Harry Potter thing, really younger kids going into a magical world. And so then you sort of have like a gazillion shows on Netflix and the other streaming networks that were created. And they're all like kids at a boarding school that are, they're young and they're just going to go through puberty and go through discovering magic at the same time. So what I like about this one is that it's like graduate students who discover that they're magicians and go to graduate school for magic. So it's like the grown-up version, which is really, because it's like, and then there's cussing, and then there's the sex, and there's the drug use, and because it's the grown-up version. So it's like,
that's what it comes off to be. It comes off like very, very adult, like college age Harry Potter. Like it's
not college age. Grad school.
Grad school.
They've all finished college.
Same thing.
No, they're older.
I only went to community college.
Grad school is older. So it's like, people in their mid-20s discovering that they have these gifts and these talents, and they've gone through more stuff before it comes into their life. So it intersects with their lives as adults. Yeah. And it's just different than watching coming of age stories, because I like coming of age stories too. But this is just a unique take on it, because it is, every single thing about it is a much more adult sensibility. Yeah. It is based on a series of novels written by Lev Grossman. I did go and read the novels after watching the first couple seasons. There are 5 seasons of the show, I believe. And I don't watch the 5th season as much as I rewatch the other ones because I know it's coming to a close, and I actually find that kind of painful. I don't want the world to end, and I don't want the storylines to get tied up. So I have trouble rewatching all the way to the end, which is true of Supernatural as well. I don't really like watching last season. I want to watch Beast just stay in the world because I'm enjoying it. And they do tell a good arc, so they do tell things that continue to unfold and to kind of conclude by the end of the series. So it's a good series in that way. There's only 5 seasons, so it's not overwhelming. Well, it's a little bit if people only want to watch one season of something. There's a little more. You could watch just the 1st and 2nd seasons and stop. I mean, it does leave you with something new that's going to unfold and take it in a new direction, but it also kind of wraps up some storylines, especially between season 1, season 2. It wraps up all the big storylines that it introduces in the beginning. And some really difficult things happen to the characters. So it is pretty responsible storytelling at the end credits. Whenever they've dealt with something that might have been a little bit triggering for an audience member, they actually have hotlines and resources for people to call. Because
there are a couple episodes of Mr. Robot that do that too.
Yeah, because there are episodes that deal with mental health. There are episodes that deal with rape. And they show some pretty violent scenes having to do with drug use, and the magicians are dealing with multiple realities, and some of it is going to impede upon mental health. And some of the characters, more than one of the characters, have some struggles in that regard as well. And then the issue with rape is a very, very real issue in our world, but it's quite gruesome and real how they film the scene. The major scene about that, just one major story arc that unfolds up because of that incident. So it can be very upsetting, but I really respect that there's hotlines on there for people that if you have experienced sexual assault, resources of where to reach out. If you are struggling with mental health, where to reach out. For suicide prevention hotlines and that sort of thing. So I think that's really important. It's not just throwing a bunch of really difficult things in the midst of this sort of fantastical storytelling. There's some real stuff that's coming up, and I think that's what I enjoy about it. And the books are quite different. There's a lot of the same world building, and the characters mostly have the same names. And it's really funny because one of the characters does not have the same name. In the books, she's Janet, and in the shows, she's Margot. And when they first show up in the library, which the library is the repository of all knowledge and is held by master magicians, and they become major characters in the show throughout the many seasons. When they first all show up in the library, the head librarian goes, "Oh, there you are, Quentin, Alice, Penny, Elliot, and Janet." And she goes, "Margot," and then she looks at her and goes, "This time." And it's so cute because it's like it's just this little moment. Like if you read the book, you're like, why the fuck is her name Margot?
Tip of the hat.
Yeah, it's very subtle, but it's very cute. This time, your name's Margot. Because in the original stories, it was Janet. And I love the casting that they did. So some of the casting is a little different from how the characters were described in the books. I feel like Elliot and Penny are quite a bit different in their characterizations in the books. And I love the actors that play those characters in the show. And I think they do a fantastic job. And so what I've said a little bit about what I like about the show. What was your feeling as you watched most or all of it with me?
It's been a while since I've watched like the bulk of it with you.
He hasn't re-binged it, unlike me.
I remember, a lot of like complex storytelling. I remember the first season they're like trying to stop this very powerful, like the beast.
A very, very bad dark wizard, sort of Voldemort.
Dark force, but then when they do stop him, like that just complicates things more. It's very similar to Mr. Robot in that sense. You slay one.
It has unintended consequences.
You slay one dragon, and then you got to deal with the fallout of that. Yeah.
Actually, that is a thing that unfolds throughout the show as well. I hadn't really thought it's another parallel. It's not the only moment where something that they think is going to be like deliver them into something better actually has all these unintended consequences, and then there's like all this fallout that has to be dealt with after that, which is pretty real world, actually.
I think there's a lot of that. I remember like there's a lot of good character dynamics in there, and there's definitely some characters. There's a big cast. Like you think like certain characters are like your main character, but then like No, this is a very ensemble piece. I like that. There's definitely characters who I like, and there's definitely some characters that got on my nerves. I think everybody is good at it. Everybody's well cast, but there like certain people like Quentin pisses me off. I'm sorry.
And Quentin's kind of the central protagonist. He is the lead character you meet first.
Yeah, he's a bit
a bit whiny,
just overly whiny and emo for me. Like, I want to go to my fillery, but and also like what's her face? The blonde classes, Alice. Yeah, Alice. I hate Alice.
And they're like the lead couple.
They're like the lead couple, but
everybody else is brilliant.
But I love Elliot.
And Elliot's
probably my favorite, and I love Margot. And Margot's great. Margot ain't taking no shit. I love Margot.
Yeah, Elliot and Margot are amazing. Well, there's in one of the further seasons, there's this episode called 6 Short Stories, and it tells you 6 stories that are unfolding through 6 different smaller characters. And the person, someone's reading these stories. So our lives are written into books. And so the record of each of us is kept as a tale, as a book that goes into the library. So the library is the repository of all knowledge, not just, science and philosophy textbooks, but the stories of our lives. So it's the place that keeps the history and the memory of everyone. And so someone's reading these 6 short stories, and someone else has told them to read the stories. And they're supposed to recognize by the end of this tale, but you as the audience member get to now see each of these 6 short stories. The reader character in the show is supposed to realize that it's not always about the main characters. Really important things are happening that really matter to everybody and also are very big for the individuals experiencing them all around what seem like the central figures in this story. And that's what the actor, the character in the show who's reading these 6 is supposed to recognize that. But you as an audience member get to recognize that also. And it's very, very, very smart storytelling. So there's some episodes that are a little more meta and kind of commenting on themselves. They are playing with some, alternate timelines and what's happening in the universe and that sort of thing a little bit. But I love that they develop arcs for so many of the characters, even like the head librarian. She could just be this figure representing that entity, but she has an incredibly interesting arc throughout the show. So there's development for everybody, and that's part of what makes it really valuable as someone who loves fiction and I love good storytelling. Is I'm interested in like things that happen for all of the characters, and like the dean of the school where they go to grad school to become magicians, like the dean's arc and like his story and what's happening with him. It's all pretty amazing. I love it.
Like, and everybody has an arc, right?
Yeah. Everybody has a journey that's unfolding with there's not that many small throwaway characters that come in for a while and then you don't see them again. There's just basically like Todd. So it's like, just don't be the Todd. Like, have a real arc. Most shows have tons of Todd, which is really funny if you have seen the show, that I'm sort of calling them out on what they did with Todd, which is they didn't give him a full arc. But then you have, other characters that come in not until the 2nd season, but are there to the very end and have very important arcs as well. So it's a very ensemble cast, and what is the ensemble keeps developing. It's not fixed. Even like Firefly, which is another one of my favorite shows, which is very, very good storytelling and has a wonderful ensemble cast, and is one of those things that got tragically cut short. So there's not enough of it. Even with Firefly, it is that set cast. Perhaps if they had many more seasons, they would have had, someone that's leaving or someone that's dying or someone else that's joining or whatever. Even with Buffy, of course, all of a sudden, season 6, Dawn, where'd that sister come from? Maybe there would have been some of that. It is Joss Whedon storytelling, so likely he would have killed off someone you really love, like Serenity, the movie. Joss likes to do that sometimes. But it's, the Magicians, I think, keeps evolving it beyond the classic ensemble cast. It's even more fluid and it's more dynamic than just that first ensemble.
Yeah, it's interesting when they bring the whole like Fillory. Fillory is kind of this very magical, like alternate world that is written about in these children's books that Quentin kind of grew up with. And when they bring that world into the fold, and some of the characters become like royalty in the Fillory world, and the
so
whole
in the
dynamic
world
there.
of the magicians, these characters grew up reading a book about children who go through a portal and get to a magical world. It's very much Narnia.
Yeah.
And it's Fillory. And yet what happens is they realize Fillory is a world, and the children that were written about do exist and did go to Fillory. And then some of them also get to travel to Fillory. So then there's a second world where things are happening. So things are happening on Earth, and things are happening in Fillory and in the library, which kind of exists outside of time and space. And then there's a place in between that's not Fillory and not any of the other worlds. It's called the Neitherlands, because it's neither here nor there. It's kind of brilliant. So you have to pass through the Neitherlands to get into a portal to go to another world.
Nice.
And so the Neitherlands is full of fountains, and you jump into the fountain, and that's the portal to get to each of the worlds. So you have to know which fountain to jump into if you find yourself in the Neitherlands. Otherwise, you might get stuck neither here nor there forever. And so that's a really interesting thing there. And where do all those other fountains go? We only learn about basically sort of 3, 2 worlds and 1 not world pocket universe sort of thing, which is like Earth, Fillory, and the library. But there's like way more storytelling that could happen, because that the Netherlands is full of fountains, guys.
Yeah.
There's a lot of worlds out there.
Yeah. So I guess there's one great thing about magicians I kind of want to mention, but I hesitate to mention because it would involve going into spoiler territory. But before we do, like, what do you think, if you had to encapsulate for somebody, what makes this show so like endlessly like rewatchable and bingeable for you to the point where you binge watch it on the couch late at night so much? What is it that keeps you coming back with all the other things out there? Because I think that's an accomplishment, honestly, with both of these shows we're talking about tonight, especially in our world where there's so much goddamn content all the time.
Yeah, why are we in love with
to have
Mr. Robot
anything
and the
that you
Magicians?
keep coming back to over and over again? I think that's an accomplishment, frankly, because like there's so much content, you watch it and you throw it away and you don't ever think about it again. So.
Oh, and occasionally there's episodes where they get to sing a bit, and I must say,
there you go.
They're good singers. They're really good singers. Elliot and Katie, those actors in particular, are kind of amazing, and they find moments for them to both get to really shine as vocalists, which as a singer makes me really happy. And the show has a really great soundtrack. I love there's so many. I'm just like watching the show. I'm just waiting for the music cue to drop. Like I know exactly where the music cues are going to be, and I know what song it's going to be. If I think about a scene, a song will play in my mind that plays with that scene, because the song choices are very specific and they're very complimentary. And because it's set now in our world, it can use current music and it doesn't have to apologize for it, because it's all just sort of now-ish, 2016. So it's sort of like Mr. Robot, I think.
Yeah,
the first season.
around the same time. Yeah,
because the kids are, these are grad students. They're invited to their first year of a 3-year graduate program, and they're entering in 2016. So that's where it's starting, and it went through 2020 or 2021 or something. So, why is it so endlessly bingeable?
Yeah.
It's hard to know why there's a certain tone that just appeals to you and you don't mind going back to it, because at some point we're going to talk about Outlander, which is an entirely different genre, and yet it's a series that I read and reread. So when I don't know what to read or reread, there's like 2 series I've been rereading a lot, and one is the Dresden Files. I love the Dresden Files, and and that's also a magical world set like today in Chicago, and it's sort of like urban fantasy around a wizard solving crimes and protecting people, and then there's like Outlander, which is like time travel fantasy in Scotland and America in the 1700s, with little reflections of the 20th century as the time travel characters happen going back and forth. And like, why these things? I don't know, because I used to reread Dune a lot, and we are going to talk about Dune later this year, guys.
Yeah,
we're talking about Dune.
Fingers crossed.
We can still talk about it. Even if we don't have the second movie, I think we should talk about the original Dune movie, the book, and then the new Dune movie. Because just those 3 things, I could talk an entire episode
We'll definitely talk about it at a podcast at some point. Like
we'll figure out the timing, but we will talk about Outlander at some point, and we will talk about Dune at some point, because those are things that I've also been very immersed in for a very long time. So they have an influence on my personality and my sensibility and how I see reality, how I see the world. And I reread The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings so much, and then the Harry Potter books, I reread them many, many times. And so there's just something a little bit comfortable, but a little bit fresh about The Magicians. That's a little bit like the book series that I've reread the most, that the show is. And when I just don't know what world I want to be part of, I can just always go join this one, and it's usually fine. And the few very disturbing parts that I don't like, I just fast forward through those now. And I've already seen them. I know the really dark, disturbing things that happen, and I there's only a couple. I just don't watch them anymore, but I like watching the rest of the show. And I think it's just because I love the tone, I love the quippiness, I love the banter, I love how smart it is, I love that it's very real and that they cuss, and some of them are more straight edge, and some of them are very drug friendly, and people in my world are like that. So we're very straight edge, and I know a lot of people that don't partake at all, and then I know some people that are more recreational about things. And that feels real. The cussing that they do feels very real. It feels more like diversity of my friend group. If somebody told all of us we were magicians, we'd be like, well, of course we are. And then we would be a lot like these kids, and things would go horribly, awfully wrong because we're all a little bit of a mess, and we're all just figuring our way. So, it kind of feels more like me, oh yeah, they could just invite me and I'd be a cast member. So totally, I'd be hanging with all of them.
The diversity and the complexity of the relationships with the characters, and also the diversity of the cast and the diversity of the sexualities of the characters too.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't feel, it feels real without feeling like, box ticking of like, oh, we gotta have a black person, gotta have a gay person. It doesn't feel like they're just shoving them in just to shove them in. It feels organic. It feels
more real. Like it's diverse because reality. People are diverse.
Yeah, exactly.
Not diverse because they were like, let's make sure to tick every box.
Exactly. Yeah.
But just because they were, and the original author of the book series, Lev Grossman, he is a consulting producer on the show. He's not a main producer on the show. So I always like that when the authors who built the world are still involved, and the show has not gone off the rails so much that the author's disgusted and wants nothing to do with it. It's generally a good sign if the author continues to be involved in the world that they've created. So that is a nice thing that's there. But yeah, I guess it just feels like close enough to relate to that feels like, my own friend group is sort of these characters on the show. And also at the same time, they get magic, which we don't have, but wouldn't that be awesome? So there's just a little bit of wish fulfillment maybe about watching all of it. And I like... we love Doctor Who, and so there's like when you have these multiple realities that they are in Earth and they get to go to Fillory, and there's the library in the Netherlands, and there's other stuff going on. It's just more layered and more interesting than just Earth or just fantasy. Because, some things are just fantasy and you're out there in this other world. Like Dune, you're just going to be in the Dune world. You're not going to be back on Earth and be like dealing with going back and forth. But this is more complicated because you actually have both. In the same way Doctor Who has episodes on Earth and episodes other places. So, there's just something that's more... that keeps your attention for longer when it's complicated like that. And, sometimes I know that I want to put something on that I can take a nap to. Yeah. And I can't do it if I haven't seen it yet. Sure. Because I have this brain that won't shut off. And I'm like, I might miss something. Yeah. So like the only things I can really nap very comfortably to now are The Magicians and Supernatural, because I've seen them all so much that I know exactly what's going to happen in every episode. So if I fall asleep, I don't actually miss. I can wake back up and I'm right back in the world. I actually know everything I missed from where I last remember to where I wake back up. It doesn't matter. So it's nice sometimes if you just need to like take a nap and have background noise. And like just going and laying in your bed, your brain might get too active and you couldn't actually take a nap. So like for me, I have to find like that right magic combo of things in order to be able to rest. Not sleeping at night, but like take a rest some other time. Like there's just certain conditions when I can actually do that. So it's kind of like a sleep maintenance plan for me of like, what can I have on that my brain will not be like, but I can't miss anything. And just watching something for the second time is generally not enough. My brain's still like, I can't miss anything. Like I would not nap right now. We are watching Mr. Robot, and it's only the second time for me to watch it. And now I know the things that unfolded later, so I'm able to watch it afresh in a show as smartly written as Mr. Robot. Like, I definitely don't want to miss anything. So I'm not going to watch that when I'm like sleepy, because I don't want to fall asleep.
No.
So yes, it's no disrespect to the magicians that they're the main show I nap to. It's only because I know
Because
it
you know it so much. No,
well,
yeah, exactly.
And I know
It's
everything that I missed.
It's the comfort food security blanket type show. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I got to give it kudos for this. And I'll be vague with this spoiler, but if you don't want to know absolutely anything, I'll give you a time code, guys, to skip to. Watch the show first, or if you already watched the show or you don't care, then don't skip. But there's the time code to go to if you want to skip to on YouTube and Spotify. So I got to give it kudos for it killing off one of the major characters in like its penultimate, its second to final season. And
Last
that character, and it's not a Marvel thing. That character does not come back like at all. They're
really gone.
They dead and they stay dead. And like I got to give it kudos for that because I can't think of many other things off the top of my head
where the
that have done
lead
that.
Protagonist is done.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, because it's like Ned Stark,
Exactly.
And he only got part of the first book / first season. And so he's like a false start first character, a false start lead. And this is not with the magicians. It's not. And they make 2 Ned Stark references in the show. One where they use his name, and an earlier reference where they just said, what if we're one of those shows that just kills off its leads in the midst of the first season? And so they're alluding to it without saying it. But then later they actually say it because they're talking about...
So this side of Game of Thrones, kudos for that character death that doesn't come back. But yeah. I can't make Game of Thrones references because I haven't watched it and I still don't want to watch it. That's just me.
Yeah. And I had read the series multiple times before the shows ever came out. So I've seen most of the show because I'd read the book series several times and really loved the books. So I make more references to it because it's just another of the worlds I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so that like Quentin has struggled with being alive or not being alive. He's been someone who's sort of longed to not exist a lot in his life, which is very relatable. There are people that I love in my life very much that have had that struggle of thinking the world would be better off without me. And I don't know why I'm here. Like, what's the use of me? Why should I keep existing when it's painful and it's hard and it's, so what? And you meet him there. He's actually in a mental health facility in the very first episode of the first show. You meet Quentin in the midst of his struggle, that it's really hard for him. He doesn't feel like he has a place in the world. And hey, Unheard Sirens, Renegades alert, he discovers he has magic and finally realizes there are other aliens like him, and he does have a place in the world. Yeah. He's always been on medication. He's always struggled. He's had several hospitalizations in his past. This is very much clear in the book series as well as the show. He's been on medication in order to manage his depression and his suicidal tendencies and his social anxiety. And when he goes to Break Bells, which is the grad school for magic that they get invited to, he stops taking his prescription. He doesn't need those medications anymore because the feeling of being a completely abandoned, stranded, lost, confused outsider dissipates because he's still a weirdo and he's still a freak and he still struggles with depression. It's really hard for Quentin to stay happy and satisfied with life. Like, that is a difficult position for him to hold in the world. Even after he discovers magic, even after he falls in love and has a relationship, like, he still struggles with that. But maybe part of the reason that Quentin doesn't get on my nerves the way he does with you is because, like, I have had a number of people that I love in this world that are a lot like that have really had that kind of struggle. And when you are really dealing with depression, you get to a happier place and new things come in that relieve some of it, but you can slide back in and then find yourself back in depression again. And so Quentin really struggles with that. And what's amazing is that there's this really, really brilliant arc of like what happens and why he dies. And he's really putting himself on the line to save people and to save the world. And yet the first thing when he gets to the afterlife, you get a little bit of him before he heads off to whatever's after the first check-in point in the afterlife. You go to the underworld and you have a little check-in moment. So you get that scene, and then he's going to go to the subway station and he goes to whatever's next. And then that's just left vague, and he doesn't come back. Like Remy was saying, he is gone. They don't just revive the character and go to the underworld, rescue him, bring him back. Like that's a trope that gets done in a lot of series. Like, we can't really let go of them, so then there's this journey to get them back. But with Quentin, like, you have that scene where he is in the afterlife and they're like, no, you've died, you're gone. And he says, did I do this to save everyone, or did I finally figure out how to commit suicide? Like, he's not, at first he's like, wait, did I just want to die? Is that why I did this? Because I was always struggling with being alive versus not. And I think that is such a poignant, beautiful moment. And the person that he is talking with, I guess you've already seen the show to this point, hopefully. I don't want to give away too many spoilers. I just feel like it's such a disservice.
We're way past that point.
I know, because we're talking about Quentin in the afterlife. Yeah. But so he's talking with Penny, and Penny's like, dude, let's go to your friends right now in the world. So as spirits, they can kind of visit them. And they see the rest of the gang sitting around the fire, like talking about what Quentin meant to them, and throwing things that they loved from him into the fire to kind of release and let him go. And he sees that no, he really did love them, and he was loved in return, and he really did try to save them. He wasn't just conveniently able to do suicide in an altruistic, I also helped other people while just getting to kill myself way. But I think it is such a mature situation. That's a complicated kind of thing that the show is dealing with, and that he's like, wait, did I mean to do that? Did I mean to die? Yeah. And in the end, in this story, he didn't. He was not just trying to end his own life. He really was there for the others, and what happened took his life, and then he can make peace with that, and then that's when he's free from that sort of the bardo, the kind of intervening place you arrive just after death, which is not your final destination, but it's like a holding area that exists in many, many world traditions. So something like a bardo is where he is. And then he gets on the subway because he grew up in New York, so it's a subway. He's got a subway token now, and he's passing on. And I think that is such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And yeah, the show has seemed to center a bit around Quentin. He's the protagonist. Yeah. He's the Harry Potter guy. He's like the white male dude you're going to follow into the world, like we do with so many stories. But they mock that in that episode I mentioned, the 6 short stories. None of that is about Quentin. It's about these other stories. And they're all supposed to realize, like, this is, all of them are important. All of them have lives that matter. And the show really means it. Yeah. It means it so much that it has 2 more seasons without Quentin. And you see what happens when someone that is loved in a friend group, which they are not always friends. Sometimes they get on each other's nerves a lot too, but they are a tight group, even though they're not all friends.
That's one thing.
See what happens.
That's one thing I'll mention is like even though like Quentin gets on my nerves, I'm glad they have like Penny in there as well, who's like my spirit animal. Quentin's getting on my nerves. It's like, shut up, bitch. Like.
You're like, thank God somebody said something.
Somebody is saying it. Yeah.
Katie will always say something. And if it's necessary, Katie will knock you out. And I love that Katie's always like, you know what? Boom. It's like the chick who's just like, I'm done dealing with this. She punches so many people. She is so tough. And I'm like, yeah, I think Katie's my character. Because sometimes it's like, well, if we were going to do the magicians for Halloween, I think we'd have to be Penny and Katie.
I'm not Indian enough to be Penny.
No, you can't do it having. But he's not Indian in the books. So the original Penny wasn't. The original Penny was emo. You'd rather be Elliot. I don't think I'm very Margot, but I could play Margot.
You could pull off Margot.
I could play Margot, but I'm not a Margot. I'm a little more like Katie.
Fair enough.
Than the others. But I don't punch as many people as Katie. Katie is like.
Yeah.
Katie's the like much more pissed off, sort of, self-assured. But it's like she does it for a good reason. Yeah. It's generally deserved. If Katie punches you, you had it coming. It's kind of like when Penny says something like quippy and insulting. It's like, yeah, it came from somewhere. You're not wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah.
That's the Magicians.
That's the Magicians, guys, and those are our bingeable TV shows, guys. What are your bingeable and re-bingeable shows? What are the ones that you keep going back to over and over again? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, please
below
let us know
what we
because
should
we'll go
check
watch
out.
them.
We'll check them out. Yeah.
We're always looking for new worlds to fall into.
And of course, any other topics you want us to talk about, thoughts on any of this, thoughts on what's going on with the writers and actors strikes, let us know that as well in the comments below. We'll love to hear from you guys.